Bagaitsu Dumelang, and welcome to this edition of the Balcony Dialogues. We are doing episode number 5, right? I want us to talk about the current burning topic around the Fiscus challenges or constraints that are currently happening in South Africa. So recently, we've seen, it's all over in the news as you guys know, the finance minister had to postpone the budget speech, and that is purely due to the fact that there's disagreement clearly between the GNU parties in terms of what should be the best approach. But before we even get into the serious stuff, guys, I want us to talk about, I just want to share with you the stuff that I'm currently reading. I'm reading 2 books currently, very interesting. I'm just about to finish one, and the other one I'm just about to start. I have gotten this book by a fellow brand SA ambassador, Winning the Money Game. It's a guide to financial well-being. It's written by Mlamuli Mbambo. Guys, I enjoy this book. Anyone can actually read it. Whether you know too much about, you have much knowledge about finances, even kids. I find it so, I liked his reading, his writing style actually. And I can't wait to have him on the platform. I think soon I'll have him, and then we can have a conversation about the book and what inspired it. And if any of you guys want a book, I think from that conversation, we'll get more details in terms of how you can get that book. But if not, you can talk to me, and then I can just give you links in terms of how you can get the book. Take it from me, guys. Beautiful writing. I was impressed by the fact that actually it's his Facebook even. Yeah. So yeah, that's that. The second book that I'm reading, it's Witness to Power by Matthew Sposa. I've just started reading, so I don't have much review about it. But as soon as I do have, I'll share my views about the book. But the reason why I got it was because of the fact that he's one of the best political leaders for us to have in South Africa. 1. 2 is the fact that by the time when, at the peak of the biggest South African political changes, he was part of the NEC at the time. I think he was a treasurer of the National Executive Committee of the ANC. So I think that's one of the books that one can look at, right? Yeah, now getting into the serious stuff. Is South Africa at the brink of collapse, especially around the Fiscus? And I want to break it down to the level of, like, as simple as one can. So as much as individual or a person can do their own budget based on the income that they have and their expenses, government go through the same process, right? So what happens is that you have South African Revenue Services, which collects taxes. So it collects money on behalf of government. So this collection can come through personal income taxes. So people who are working, obviously, you get taxed, and that money goes to SARS. We also raise money through VAT, which is the current burning topic, value-added tax. So for every goods and services that you buy, there would be a portion of your 15% that gets to be paid as VAT, that also end up going to SARS. Obviously, it's not applicable in all goods and services, right? So there's goods which are exempt of VAT, for example, like your bread, milk, and so forth. The other portion is the import duties. So import duties is when countries export, when you export goods into the country, into South Africa, there's a portion of taxes that you pay of the value of the goods that you are importing into the country. That is done purely to protect local companies, but also it can raise money for the government. The other one is excise duty. So excise would be additional tax that is levied on stuff like alcoholic drinks and cigarettes. So they call it sin taxes, but that is what they call excise duties. There's also levies that you get, like your what do you call it, fuel levy. So for every liter of petrol that you pour at whatever petrol station, there's a portion of money that goes to government, which is levied. They call it fuel levy. And that's why also most of the time you find that, for example, a liter of petrol, if you compare it to Botswana, for example, we pay too much higher than them. It's because of that fuel levy portion of it. The other part of the taxes, which one am I forgetting? Jeez, there must be the other one. Yeah, so like property taxes. When you sell your property, or when you sell your shares, there's what they call capital gain tax. So of the value of whatever that you're selling, they determine how much of the profit that you make, you get taxed on that. And then there's obviously corporate tax. So corporate tax is what companies pay out of their profits. That also goes to SARS. The collection part of it, guys, I think South Africa has the best collection. SARS has been doing an amazing and phenomenal job in terms of collecting taxes and making sure that they avoid, they deal with people who are evading taxes. There's also recently been so much investment around using AI, big data analytics, to make sure that the ways of filing for tax returns, ways of determining the tax that has to be calculated from other businesses or individuals has been so good. And they've actually made reforms also making sure that the process is so easy for people to pay their taxes. So props to that. So that's the SARS part of it. Collection, very good. I think the challenge now comes with the budget, or budget allocation, and being able to use the funds collected effectively. So I mentioned how your personal budget and that of government is not different. It's not different in the sense that at the moment, government collects money and then there's government expenditure. And then in the end, you either end with a surplus, which is more money, or you end up in a budget deficit. Unfortunately, with South Africa, we've been through budget deficit for a number of years. And that is not sustainable, because then in the long term, then you end up having issues that we're having where people can't keep up with every time there's increase in taxes or there's increases in VAT as it's happening. And for VAT, actually, it's very I would say anti-poor people, in the sense that it's going to increase the cost of buying goods and services. And my thing with it is also it's going to have an impact on inflation. So as the price of goods and services goes up, as you guys know, that impacts inflation. What happens with inflation, with high inflation, is that Reserve Bank end up coming up and then they increase interest rates. So it means for people who are paying bonds, who are paying credit cards, personal loans, then you end up paying more in terms of interest, because of the fact that inflation is pushed up, and South African Reserve Bank wants to reduce or maintain the level of inflation between 3 and 6%, which is their target. So generally, what do you do then if you have a budget deficit? So the government could look at the option of borrowing more money, which is not sustainable, one. Number two, the current levels of our debt as a country, it's so high that we pay, I think, about 20% of the revenue that we generate. It goes towards servicing the current debt that we have with the IMFs and these international funding organizations, right? So that is out the picture. The second option would be to increase taxes and VATs, as we've seen. The other option, which is more long-term, would be looking at cutting costs. So there's been a lot of concerns around how high the public wage bill is. So that will go with having to reduce the number of employees that government employs. That's not something that you can do like immediately. It's something that you can do in the long term. They could also go in terms of cutting costs in most of departments, right? The challenge again is the fact that there's a lot of concerns around service delivery. There is no enough money to see the government having to really do service delivery effectively, right? And there's also a challenge then of corruption also, where people are saying, but we are paying taxes, and then the money end up in people in Sandton buying Gucci's, which then means people get discouraged to pay the taxes because you pay it, and then the next thing it's somehow misused in tenders, and I want intenders to the politically connected. We end up benefiting, and even when you look at the value of work they do versus the amount of money spent on those tenders, there's no correlation, right? So then that means there's no efficiency in terms of the value being created to make sure that there's service delivery. There's the challenge. Definitely, I think come March, definitely government needs to find income to bridge the 60, I think it's 60 billion, 60 billion, yeah, which is short of the budget. They'll have to somehow have to do it. And whether it's going to come through the controversial VAT increase, I think most likely we're going to see that happen. I'm so surprised because also not long ago, I think last year, there was a reduction in corporate tax, which is something that could be done. In fact, I'm pro rather increase corporate taxes. I don't think South Africans' corporate tax is that high, number one. Number two, I don't know then if there's benefits of us having to decrease it from 28% to 20%, which is to 27%, which is the current rate. At the time, it was done to entice, I think, foreign direct investment. Has that worked? I doubt it has. So I would go there if I was the finance minister. I would look at increasing corporate tax. One. Two, also look at wealth tax, because it's something that has been spoken about vastly, but there hasn't really been a decision being taken to do that. So tax people who are more wealthy and more rich, tax them more, as opposed to imposing VAT on goods and services, which end up affecting or impacting the poor, which then bolster the narrative that South African government is more or supports more of the rich. The richer keep getting rich, while the poorer getting more poorer. So it's going to be very interesting to see it in that light, and especially around how they're going to communicate that, because there seem to be this friction between the GNU parties in terms of what needs to be done. If DA comes and then they say they're against VAT increase, which I think was pushed by the ANC, then where then is that going to be funded? Where is that gap going to be funded? If it's funded by increasing corporate taxes, as I'm saying, and the wealth tax. That's majority of the DA's constituencies of voters. Corporates like DA, it's an open secret. The wealth like DA policies. So it would be very interesting then to see how then do you create a balancing act of their conversation and their discussion and negotiation in terms of then where do we draw the money to close the gap of what I call the budget deficit. There's also like a thing of, I think this has been a ticking time bomb for South Africa, because for the longest time we've had an economy that is very consuming. Factories all over, which used to be functional, producing goods locally, they've been closed, right? And when that happens, it means then we end up importing bulk of the goods that we consume in the country. The impact of it is the fact that it means our economic development becomes very low as it is. One, two, there's also a challenge of unemployment. So for our country to really develop and being able to absorb the people who are unemployed, it will take industrializing big reforms which make sure that there's local factories which are functional, entrepreneurs are supported, in the end being able to create employment, and that closing the gap or the issues that we are seeing. This is going to be a challenge also going into the next financial years for National Treasury, because it also looks like we don't have long-term planning as our government that is seen by what happened at the budget, when the budget speech had to be passed. It looks like it's something that was decided instantly. Had we planned or had long-term plans like a 5-year plan, looking at projecting how much government spending is going to be, where are we going to get funding, it would be then easy and be able to stop the issue and the friction that we have seen. Because it does then show that there's no planning, there's no correlation, there's no goal congruence amongst the people who are in leadership position, and particularly in the GNU as a collective. So that is going to create a lot of friction and challenges at the expense of who? It's going to be at the expense of us, the citizens, because then it means every time when something has to be done, people have to spend time debating issues, even when that shouldn't be the case. Even when there's an opportunity for us to take advantage of opportunities, it's always going to be a thing of people have to sit back and discuss. The next thing 5 years is gone, GNU had done what? Nothing. So those are also some of the disadvantages of having these GNU arrangements that I'm personally I wasn't a fan of it, and I don't think it's gonna really yield benefits in terms of us, the citizen, and ensuring that there's at the core of everything, service delivery, it's been done, or it's been effectively done. It's going to be so interesting. We can't wait to see, but hopefully I'm very optimistic, and I know that South Africans are very generally, we get through these sorts of things. I just hope that in the end, I'm pro socialist. I understand that there's benefits of capitalist economies, but I'm pro finding an equilibrium where socially people get to benefit. We eradicate poverty. We increase the number of people working into the economy. I'm also pro flourishing businesses, but it can be that we end up having a lot of rich people. We have a small portion of wealthy people, and then a large chunk of the citizens are cannot even, sustain or live, decently in a country that is so rich as South Africa. So yeah, we can't wait for that time. I really hope that things turns out well for us. But I'm for VAT. No, I'm not for it. If they do increase it, it has to be 2% is also very high. But at the same time, I'm pro look at corporate tax, look at wealth tax, look at other opportunities like cutting costs, and even the cabinet. I mean, there's a lot of spending of our ministers, and no one is saying anything about that. Before the GNU thing, DA used to make a lot of noise about how the ANC should reduce the cabinet. Now they're part of government, and they're quiet as far as that's concerned. That's also concerning. Will that be done? I doubt, because then there's no one making noise as they used to, as far as that's concerned, right? So yeah, I think that's it for me, guys, for this episode. Lastly, I just want to thank everyone that has supported this platform. I've seen you guys subscribing. I just want to also plead and say, please keep supporting the channel. I want to grow, and the more you have subscriptions, watches, is the more that you're going to see the platform grows. And then lastly, we're going to have merchandise for the balcony dialogues. I've put up a link on, it's a short clip. If you look at our channel, the latest posting, it's how the merchandise is going to look like. It's quality t-shirts, and I hope that people can also buy that in supporting this channel. The revenue would directly be used in terms of pumping it into the platform by either buying new equipment for the podcast, having to look at employing a part-time photographer and editor. We're looking into that, and yeah, so keep supporting the channel, subscribing, commenting, and liking the content. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you. Bye.